All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. We are back with another Viking loot episode. Andrew, we have not posted a Viking loot video in a long time. Viking loot is basically where we go through our catalog and kind of review and preview some of our products. Today, we're going to be previewing and talking about Children of Eriu, which is our brand new book. This was released, I want to say, late 2021, probably near the end of it, literally like December. And today we're going to be going through that. How are you doing today, Andrew?
I am doing fantastic. I am so excited about this book. I'm getting tons of messages, emails from happy Kickstarter backers that just received the book. All these wonderful, kind words are flowing back. So I'm just going to relay that to the team that I know watches these episodes. So our authors, co-authors, artists, editors, designers, everyone that worked on this book. Everyone is overjoyed to have these land in their mailbox as of the last couple of weeks since they've been going out of the fulfillment center. So good work to the whole team. I'm proud of you guys.
Yeah, so as a short introduction, I am Ken. I am your host for today, and obviously I am joined by the creator and the owner of Fate of the Norns. So for those who don't know, Children of Eriu, it is very similar when it comes to, I want to say, to our Fate of the Norns, where it's a full game. It has the rule sets, it has monsters, it has everything you need to play. However, instead of Norse mythology, it's Celtic myths. Andrew, can you elaborate a little more about that? Give us a quick overview of what else.
Yeah, I want to kind of toss in a table of contents. I know my camera doesn't have the fancy auto focus feature that yours does, but I'll kind of walk you guys through this. It's a full-blown RPG. Cover to cover, this is all you need. This could be your entry point into the Fate of the Norns universe and playing with runes. So at the very beginning, we've got an introduction, which kind of walks you through what is the timeline? Like, where is this set? Geographically, historically, mythologically. And obviously, as Ken mentioned, this is our Celtic RPG. So we've moved into the western portions of Midgard. It's still around the same period as the Ragnarok setting, the 10th century. And while it's Ragnarok in the Viking kingdoms, the Celtic twilight has gripped the Celtic kingdom. And the Celtic kingdoms, there are 6 of them, which would be beginning with Eriu, which is what this book focuses on. And then we have several others, which is Alba, Scotland, the Kingdom of Manx, which is the Isle of Man and the surrounding areas, the islands, Wales, Cornwall, and Brittany. And so that's pretty much the stomping grounds that you'll be running through with the content in this book. Next is your Figures of the Isles section. And this one basically walks you through the people, the places, the culture, the laws, the economy of these kingdoms. The supernatural aspects, the fairies, the fairy tales, the religion, the afterlife, the deities. Just basically gives you a full 30,000 foot overview of everything that is in the Children of Eriu universe. Next, we get into the rules. So we're already at page 152 of this beefy book by the time we get to the rules. And the rules present the latest and greatest version of the runic game system. So, Ken, you've already played the version which is RGS2 that we call internally with the core rulebook. And ever since then, we've been refining it and streamlining it. And with Denizens of the North, we released some optimizations. Lords of the Ash, we released more optimizations. And with the planned next projects that are coming down the pipeline, I wanted to add social combat, which was going to be a big addition to the runic game system. And I also wanted to add meta tags to skills. So for those of you who already know the runic game system, the meta tags are when you combine runes together to change the way your powers work. And so active powers work like that, but I wanted to actually unify that across active powers and skills. And so that is the optimization you also get within the RGS3 system. Fully backwards compatible. You can have someone sitting at your gaming table playing an Ulfhednar from the core rulebook alongside a Fianna from the latest book, and they can play in the same experience, same adventure, no problems at the game table. Next, page 236, we hit the archetypes. So there's a whole bunch of new player archetypes for the players to explore. Then we hit denizens by page 272. So a whole bunch of Celtic creatures from fairy tales and mythology. And then we have the talents and powers. And so that's the whole list of spells, maneuvers, abilities. And we're already at page 342 by that point. Then we get to magic items by page 477. And then the obligatory introductory adventure on page 482, which is going to round us out to the index. And this puppy right here is 500 pages. So, when we finished our first layout of this book, it was pushing 800 pages. And it was just too much. And so what we wanted to do was, without reducing the art in terms of the size and the color and the vibrance, and not cutting any of the word count, we had to go creatively with the layout and kind of try to compress things in terms of kerning, spacing between lines, how we expand, text around images, all of that to save about 300 pages. So that took about 3 months of work. It kind of delayed the project a little bit, but it's a lot more manageable of a book than 800 pages. So
yeah, impressive book, honestly. Like for 500 pages, people, a lot of times they look at the book and they're like, wow, that's an expensive book. But you look at the content and how much stuff you put in there and how much work we had to put in to make it from 800 to 500-ish pages is actually absolutely ridiculous. So actually huge props to the team for that. Huge props to the team. But that being said, there is a lot of different changes from this book in comparison to the other one. As you mentioned, we did have a change to the ruinous game system. We also have a change to the art style, which we'll talk about that afterwards. And we also have a change in the lore. The lore, obviously, for those who don't know, like we said, it is Celtic. So we're going to talk about that as well. So those are three very different things that we want to talk about specifically so that people knows what they're getting into. It's not just like, oh, this is just another fit of norm. No, it's very similar, but also very different. Let's start off with RGS, the new rune system. How did you go about for creating this new one, especially when we're talking about social combat? Social combat is such a unique system, as well as the different meta tags for the skills. I want to know the concept behind renewing and also changing up a bit while adding something new and fresh.
Yeah, so one of the things that I kind of wanted to optimize, let's start with the skill system first, the quicker answer. And that one is, every time I had to teach RGS, I was always teaching, this is how the way active powers work, and this is the way skills work. And it was kind of always bugging me because I said, they work similarly, but different enough that I always have to teach two different approaches to resolving both of them. And I said, you know what? It won't take much of a nudge to turn one into the other. And so by adding meta tags to skills, now I just need to teach one thing, and the players are playing. And so that is one of my design principles. My design philosophy is, let's get the players playing as fast as possible. I want you to spend less time trying to learn the rules and more time at the game table and enjoying the game. So that was the first thing that I wanted to do for RGS3. Second thing was obviously social combat. And so now in our pipeline, as you know already, we've announced that we've got Athkliath in the works as part of our last Kickstarter, which is like a city-centric RPG. So there's going to be a lot more social interactions there than there will be violent interactions, right? There'll be some violence, but by and large, you're going to have a lot more social drama than violent drama. And down the pipe, another project that we're working on are the Southern Kingdoms in Europe. So basically picture everything from the Caliphate in Spain all the way across the Papal States, all the way to the Varangian Guard in Constantinople, or Miklagard, as the Vikings called it. Down the Volga trade route. And all of that is also going to require a lot more cloak and dagger stuff. A lot of political wheeling and dealing in the social, circles and with cabals and things like that. And so the system needed to evolve to handle social interactions as interestingly as we have physical combat. And so what's interesting about the physical combat? Well, when you pick an archetype, you have very cool physical powers, right? You have active powers that do really cool physical combat stuff. You've got passive powers that allow you to do stuff. You've got skills that allow you to augment your weapons or things that also boost your combat. And then when you go shopping, what do you get? Well, weapons and armor, right? Like a huge table of really cool stuff like that. Well, what if we did the exact same thing for social? So when you create your archetype, you get social powers. And those social powers give you benefits in different domains of social combat. So there's questioning, where you want to try and get information from someone that doesn't want to give that up. There's also emotional conditions, so you might want to provoke someone into one of those emotional conditions that's going to put them off kilter for the rest of the encounter. You got a certain type of advantage on them because they are either in love with you, or they're fearful of you, or you've rekindled some sort of grief inside them. So emotional conditions. And then there's also compels, where you are trying to talk someone into doing something that they wouldn't normally do. And so each one of these archetypes are now going to have their own powers. They have to actually manipulate a social environment, like in a movie, into an outcome they desire. And just like that, when you go shopping, let's say in Athkaliath, this upcoming city RPG, you're going to end up being able to buy clothing and accessories that give you bonuses to social combat. And so now social combat becomes just as nuanced and interesting as physical combat. And so you don't have to be sitting there at the table if, let's say, you're someone just likes to, roll some dice or draw some runes. You go, I just want combat to break out, so sink my teeth into some rules and do some fun mechanical stuff. Now you can actually have social interactions that actually are very satisfying. And so that's what we added. That was the really big add in RGS3. And when we first previewed RGS3 was in Creatures from Fairy Tale and Myth. Let me grab that book, just give everyone a box. Here we go. All right. So we first previewed a full rule set of RGS3 in Creatures from Fairy Tale and Myth. So anyone that's got this copy of the book can actually take it, and we've got guidelines on how you can apply things like adding social combat to your existing old archetypes, your existing old adventures, how to bolt that stuff on. And as we move forward, I've got a team of people working on guidebooks that are going to create all of that content for you, so you don't need to figure out how to bolt it on. We're doing all that backwards retrofitting for the core rulebook and all that as a project that's in the works.
I honestly think that this social combat is so unique, and as a person who likes more like the social aspect, like let's say for example I want to haggle with someone, I want to convince someone to do something, having this different style is actually fantastic, which is so unique and innovative. And that's why when I heard about it, I was like, oh my god, that's super amazing. And I think that's going to be such game-changing kind of content, but more or less like a mechanic that makes it really fun. So another thing that is pretty different is the art style. If you're used to our Fate of Norn art style, is a very much, it shows like very, very vibrant. All our stuff is very vibrant. It's like nice red. The art style is very similar to what you would see back in the days. But now we got more like a stained glass kind of art style, which
exactly
I absolutely love.
Yeah, it's
mm-hmm.
Celtic stained glass art style, knotwork, mm-hmm. And see if I can get a nice 2-page spread here. Start of a chapter.
Yeah, I love the art, and I like that we went with a different one, so it kind of differentiates ourselves from one is Fate of Norns and one is going to be Children of Eriu. But what went behind that? How did you want, like, what's the thought process about choosing that specific art? Was it not too easy? Was it hard? Like, what was the situation? Did you guys knew you wanted to go with that right off the bat, or how did it go?
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the things I always try to do is get some homogeneity, a similarity throughout all of our books for art style, right? So it has to look old. It has to look like it's colored with natural pigments, and it has to resonate with the style of the culture that we're trying to represent. And so whatever culture we're going to bring into our Fate of the Norns universe, we're going to get art styles that complement that culture, that historical art style that already exists in history, in museums, and put that in the book so you actually are transported into those spaces. And so when we first started looking at, Creatures from Fairy Tale and Myth, we had a lot of, already we were segueing into the Celtic Kingdoms, and we were putting in creatures from that space. And when we were doing that, we were looking at an art style that's going to be conducive to transporting you into that, that pantheon of fairy tales and mythology and gods. Trying to find
a nice spread.
Yeah, nice good spread here.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like the art style, and like you said, it does represent their art. Since you are still looking for the art, we'll show back
Here's
the art.
some of the magical items too. They're all individually illustrated as well.
Ooh, that's nice. But yeah, obviously we're gonna have great art. So if you are interested in a very
gorgeous
great
all throughout.
book with the art, it's just fantastic. Let's jump to our next section. Let's talk about some of the lore. Just give us a quick rundown. I know people are interested in knowing about the base lore. Obviously, like in Fate and Norn, the base main lore was, sun and moon got eaten. We're in like Fimbulwinter, so on and so forth. What is the main storyline for this?
Okay, so the land is inhabited by the Shi, which are like the fairies, the creatures from the other world that cannot be seen without the sight. And these creatures inhabit towns, homes, the wilderness, and Shi mounds that lead into the other world. So these are gateways to other places. And people with the sight can actually see them and interact with them, and sometimes these fairies or goblins can actually make themselves visible so they can actually interact with humans. And for the most part, it's like a lot of humans can live without even knowing that they've got, visitors that are living in the barn. And a lot of it is actually understanding what are the taboos, what are the geeses, what are the rituals that surround the sociology and the etiquette around these fairies, because they're very capricious, and if you don't treat them right, things will start breaking in your house, and things will go wrong in many, many horrible ways. And then we can talk about so this is like the mid-level of supernatural entities and powers, and let's go up one level higher where we're talking now about the deities. And so when we look at Eriu, when we look at the earliest history of Eriu, it was inhabited by the Fomorians. The Fomorians were this giant race of aquatic giants that spread this pestilence across the land. And anyone who came in contact with this pestilence got sick and died. And so there were many, many invasions of this land by foreigners. And pretty much every single invasion failed. It lasted only for a certain amount of time, either a couple of years or a generation, before they succumbed to the Fomorian presence and were defeated and driven away, or just died off. And the next big invasion that survived a really long time were the Furbolg, and they were the descendants of Nemed, who his people got wiped out by the Fomorians, and they ended up marrying into the land. So they became one with the land by marrying. They took brides that were goddesses of the land, and they gained divine power that way. This is how the pantheon worked. And so they became like god kings and ruled the land for a generation. And instead of the Fomorians driving them out, actually more invaders came, called the Tuatha Danann, which are the children of Danu. And these were even more powerful invaders. And there were a series of battles, and the Tuatha Danann ended up being the victors in the case. And in the end, most of all of these deities ended up slumbering in the other world. And now, after the Milcians ended up taking over, and so we've got pretty much three cultures that are kind of a melting pot in Eriu. You've got the Vikings that have invaded. You've got the old pagan Celts, which are kind of like getting forgotten. And then you've got the Kriostai, which are the Christian Celts, are following the white god, which are the majority of the population. But then all of a sudden, the Celtic twilight hit. This is the Ragnarok, the apocalypse of Celtic world. And so now, all of a sudden, the other world stirs, and those gods start to reawaken. And so you can imagine this is kind of the setting that you're in the Children of Eriu.
All right, that's a pretty good setting. So almost I would not say similar, but we're still kind of because all these is in the same universe, I would like to say. So it's still like darkness and stuff like that. It's cold, so should be interesting. And for a final section of this, let's talk about our sequels. Obviously, since we do have, for example, Finn Norns, we have Denizens, Lord of the Ashes. We plan on doing some sequels, right?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my open, which was pretty much that we've got 6 Celtic Kingdoms, right? And when Mathieu and Tyler ended up doing a lot of the research for this Celtic material, which was vast and extensive, they ended up writing so much stuff that it just couldn't fit into one RPG book. So we have the Celtic Cyclopedia, which is like a sister book to our RPG, which has pretty much all of that content. Excuse me. And we ended up basically making the RPG really Ireland-centric. And then we've got another product in the works, which is going to be the other 6 kingdoms, which is Elba, Manx, Cornwall, Brittany, and what am I missing? And Wales. And we tease it at the back of this book, The Green Man's Crown. The cover's already done.
Oh, nice.
And it's going to be another beast of a book. So the material's been researched. Now it's all about synthesizing it and putting it together. And I'm not in a horrible rush with this one, because what I want to do is actually have Children of Eriu in the wild with my players. I want the fans to enjoy it, play it. I want to speak with them on conventions. I want to speak with them on Discord and get their feedback about what they love about the world, what they'd like to see, changed or the direction they'd want us to take with the evolution of the Celtic Kingdoms. And then I think that's when I'm really going to start putting the finishing touches on how we present that follow-up book, that sequel book. So it's really going to be fan-driven, so I just can't wait to see, the reception of how players end up, picking up their adventures in Eriu or Airi.
That makes sense, obviously, since you get a lot of feedback and then you can actually adapt and see changes. That's what we did for our first book. We waited for people, get some feedback, and then adjusted and changed a few things in Denizen, and then we did change a few things in Lord of the Ashes and change go on to what we have right now. But that is going to be our rundown for Children of Eriu. If you guys have any questions, you can always leave them in the comments down below. We will try our best to answer them. Andrew, thank you so much for giving us a rundown of Children of Eriu. We are looking forward to our next product, which we're trying to post these once every 2 weeks, but realistically probably get them closer to once a month. If there's any product you guys would like to see specifically, let us know. We can review them. I know we are planning on doing potentially a Vigrid, which is going to be potentially coming out in the near future, but let us know. But that's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Skål!
Skål!